Hello everyone, my name is Andrey, today we'll continue learning Python, and today we'll talk about Django logging. So let's start. Once again, today we'll talk about logging in Django, and we'll set up our own logger, and we'll talk about why do we need logging in the first place. So the first idea that we are going to talk about is why do we need logging. Imagine that we have a view. So I have users application in my Django YouTube project, and let's go to views, and let's import some things from django.http.response. I'll import .response. I'll import HTTP response in order to create a view. So I'll create login view, something like that, which accepts a request, and that login view will just simply return HTTP response a, or let's create h1 tag, and something like test in here. So it's a very simple view. View is like a handler for all of your requests in Django, if you're not familiar with that framework. And what we're basically doing here is we are saying that whenever our user wants to use that view, we'll just return HTTP response, which has h1 tag, HTML tag in it, and the inner text of that tag is test. So that's the whole idea. Now let's go continue with the URLs. So if you don't know about Django, when we have a view, we need to create a URL for it. So like where our view is located. URL shows that where our view is located. And it's not a very good practice to import views directly from other apps to the global URL patterns. So in our case, I import it from user. I'll import it from user to urls.py. It's not a good practice to use path, and I think you already know about that. So I created a video on the most common Django problems, and I said that all you need to do is create URLs inside of your users and all of that stuff. So I think you know about include function, and yeah. If you have never worked with Django and just watching that video for the logging part, then don't worry about that. But if you work with Django and want to work with Django in the future, then what you need to know is that basically you always need to use include whenever you create views in other applications. So never use path directly, as I will use it right here. So test view and something like login view function, and let's import it. So yeah, never do that. Always use include with your applications. So that's the whole idea of our view. Now we can run our project. So I'll run it, and let's go to something is not all right. Okay, it's a misconfiguration in logging. So let me just remove all of that. Like that, let's run it. And yeah, now everything's all right. Let's go to our application, and what we can see here is admin and test view. So I'll go to /test view, and here we have our test. So here is our h1 tag. I think it's h1, or yeah, we can go here and we can look at that. Yeah, as you can see, h1 tag with test as an inner text inside of that tag. So that is a very simple view. But what is the problem with that function? The main problem with that function is that we don't have our logging set up. So what do I mean by that? Imagine that we have a bug somewhere in that view. So it's obvious that we will not have anything inside of our simple HTTP response, but imagine that in some cases we can divide by 0. So that is a very simple error that you can make, and imagine that you divide by 0. So what is the problem with that? Whenever we use our view, so whenever we use login view with HTTP response as the return result, or any view, actually, whenever we use anything in our application, we may have some errors, or we want to monitor our application. And if we don't have logging set up, then if that error happens, I don't even know what, when, and how did it happen. So the main problem is that we don't see all of the errors, we don't see how our application behaves, and because of that, we can't simply improve our application. So imagine that you see 1 divided by 0. In 99% of the applications, as a user, you will not see that like something like division by 0. So that normal Python error, like when you use 1 divided by 0, you will not see that. Because basically what you will see in almost any web application, and Django is a web framework, is you only see error 500. And error 500 does not tell you anything, and it shouldn't tell you anything, because you are the user of the application. You're not the person who develops it. However, whenever I want to reproduce that error to fix it to fix that bug, to fix that error. We want to see why that error happened, when it happened, how did it happen, and what led to that error. And in our case, we can't simply do it with just a simple message error 500. And if you don't have our logging set up, then basically what you need to do is guess if you can reproduce that error or not, because you can have two different errors in one view. You can have tons of bugs in different views. You can even have something like an error that happens every 2 weeks, and you don't know why it happens. And if you don't have logging, if you don't know what happened before, what happened after that error, when that error happened, then you basically can't improve your application. That is the whole idea. Okay, so now we're going to talk about settings for logging. So as you can see in settings.py in our global folder in Django YouTube, in my case, we have our logging dictionary. So that is the dictionary that will allow us to set up our logging. And if we're talking about Django, then we have logging library that allows us to log things. It's not only used in Django because logging it's a pre-installed library in Python and you can use it whenever you want. But that's the basic idea. So you use logging to log things. You can basically use it from the box, so like logging.info, for example. And now let's talk about logging. So how does that work? We have a dictionary here. But before we start with that dictionary, let's create our simple info.log file. Info.log. And what are the things that we need in every logging, so in every logging system, if I can say it like that? There are 4 or even 3 things that we need. First of all, we need the time or ID. So time is the time when your event happened. So imagine that our user, for example, requests that logging view or login view. We need to show when that request happened. So in our case, it can be like 11 a.m. Basically, it's better to put like the whole date, like that, then like that, and even microseconds, something like that. So time shows when something happened. Then we have something called level. So level is the level of your log. So there are 5 common levels. Let me go to logging documentation and like that. So as you can see, logging levels. So what are those? Logging levels are different filters that allow you to show what is the type of the message that you are trying to log. In our case, it can be critical, error, warning, info, debug, or not set. Not set is very uncommon. I have never seen it in a project because basically you always use one of those five levels, and in 99% of the cases you use only info and error levels in your normal application. So what are those? Different levels allow you to filter your logs. So imagine that we have tons of messages. So we have our time, like 11:00, then something like that, something like that, something like that, something like that, something like that. So we have different logs. And if I don't know what log represents what message, so in our case, if I want to see only the informational messages in my system, so for example, user requested that view, user did that, user updated some information in the database, then what I can do is use info as a filter. So those levels allow you to see what are the different things that happened, or the different levels, the different filters, different levels that were used in your application. So in our case, let me create something like that. So you can see we have 4 informational messages, so 4 info messages. Then we have an error, and then we have a critical error. So informational messages are basically something like information. So if you can think of like I don't know, like something like very, very simple, like informational messages that you may use, but you only use them, they are not very important. So only informational messages, well, they are important. Okay, informational messages, I think you already know about that. So user requested that view, user once again updated something in the database, user changed its password, user deleted its account. Then you have error messages. So error messages show you some errors that are not critical for your application, but still those are errors. So imagine something like 1 divided by 0. But in our case, we use try and except. So we catch that error, and then we can write something like log.error. And that error will be logged as an error. So errors show you what errors happened in your application, but once again, those are not critical, because when we're talking about critical errors, we have our critical level. So critical level shows you the errors that are very, very, very important, very, very crucial in terms of your application. And that is the whole idea. I think you're already familiar with those levels, so yeah, those are pretty self-descriptive. And also you have debug, something which you want to put in debug, and warning, some warnings. Very, very simple. Okay, and now let's go to the next idea, which is time level and module. So in other programming languages, if you are familiar with JavaScript, for example, or if you're familiar with other programming languages, then module is not pretty popular. Well, it's popular, but module is kind of like a very, very broad idea. So what is module? Module shows you where Django logs happened. So imagine that we have our, not imagine, but you can see here that we have our products and our users. So two different applications. And what I can put as my module is either products or users. So it will help me to aim at the real module where our logs happened. So imagine that we have like time, like 11 a.m., informational messages from users. And I, as a developer, know that, okay, I don't need to look inside of products because my log message happened inside of users. So users application is the one that is responsible for that log message. If that error happened, or if an error happened, I know that I need to look inside of my users folder. That is very, 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 very cool. In some programming languages, you may omit it, and yeah, you may omit it in Python as well, but it's a very cool feature to have in your logs. And also what we have is our message. So message is the message that we are logging. For example, user updated something like that. So that is the message, and the whole log will look something like that. So like that, then like that, then level, something like info, module, user updated something. So you can see that log message is very, very descriptive. We still can improve something. For example, we can assign unique IDs to each log message. That can work, and you can omit time if you want, if you have IDs. So you need to distinguish different logs between each other. So that's why I'm using time, but some people use ID. That's a very great thing to do. Sometimes you even use ID with time. That's even better. Of course, you need to filter between different types of your messages, and that's why I have info here. Then we have our module users, and then we have our user updated something. And that's basically the whole idea of our logging module. So that's how we can log things in any programming language. So that's not just unique for Python, but for any programming language that you want to use. Now let me copy that second line to save my logging format, and let's go to our logging in Django. So let's just set it up. First of all, we're talking about logging version. Just leave it as 1. I will not explain everything because that video is kind of like the overview of logs. But if you want me to get deeper in logging or talk about different ideas in logging, set up some applications that will monitor our logs, then just write it down in the comments. Then you have disable existing loggers. So if you want to remove the loggers that you already have, you can set it as true, but I will leave it as false. So there are loggers that you already have, so built-in loggers in Django. If you want to remove them completely, then just put it as true. But still, I'll use false as the value for that variable. Then what we can do is use, first of all, formatters. So formatters, it's a special dictionary. So we have 3 of those dictionaries: formatters, handlers, and loggers, like that. So those are the 3 things that we need to set up in any logging application, in any application that uses logging library in Python. So yeah, that library. And what are the differences between formatters, handlers, and loggers? So formatters is the first dictionary that we're gonna create. So formatters, or formatter, is the object that shows you how you want to format your messages. So basically, whenever you want to write a message, you will not write everything yourself. So it's very, very stupid to write time, level, module, message in the logging message itself. So imagine like log, like time, then you write info, then you write your module. It's very, very stupid. And there are better ways of doing it by using formatters. So formatters, it's a dictionary, so we can create different formatters, but I'll create one for that video. So for example, I know, main formatter, that is a dictionary as well. And we need to provide two things. First of all, format, and then style. So as a style, I'm using that bracket, and I'll show you why. So format, it's a special string that allows you to pass any variables that are located in log record. Can I go somewhere here? Log record. Yeah, those are log record attributes. You can go down in the description to get that link, and you can go to log attributes or log record attributes. So what are those? Log record attributes are the different things that you, or the different fields that you can put in your log message. So in our case, we want to put 4 things: time, level, module, and message. What we can do is go here and look for those things. For example, what we can do is use ask time, so asc time, as our time, so asc time. And as you can see, we use format here as percent, parentheses, then the attribute name itself, and then s at the end. Yeah, f at the end, so different letters at the end of our attribute. But since I'm using style as a bracket, what I can do is just provide ask time inside of the brackets, and I think that is much easier. So first of all, what we need to provide is ask time. So yeah, style basically says what is the format of those brackets. I am providing that. That's why I can use, that's why I can just put those curly braces and put ask time inside of them. Okay, so first of all, we need to provide ask time, then we need to provide the level name. So if you're gonna look here, we have a level name and level NO. So as I said, let me just put 40 here. Each level has a different name, so critical, error, warning, info, but they also have numeric values, so 50, 40, 30, 20, 10. If you want to use numeric values, then you can do it, but level no, and use level NO, so level number, or numeric representation of the level, but I'll use level name because I think it's much easier to see your logs, to work with them, if you have the real names, not the integer values of your levels. So level name is the second argument that I'm gonna provide. Then we need to provide our module. Module is simply like module, and we also need to provide our message. Message is message as well. So you can look at all of those attributes here. Yeah, as you can see, there are many attributes. So function name, line number, module, milliseconds, message, many attributes. But what I'm gonna do is use that ask time, level name, module, message for that video. Okay, so now we have our formatter. So whenever I write my message, imagine like I'm writing log info hello, I'll also add ask time, level name, module, message, and I will not do it with my hands, but my formatter will do it automatically. Then we need to set up handlers. So formatters show you what is the format of your what is the format. So what is the format of your log? But handlers show you where to put those logs. So we can create different handlers, and I'll create 2 handlers for that video. First of all, we're going to create stream, or let's call it console. So console handler is a simple handler that will write all of our logs inside of our console. Let's create it as handler, and we need to provide the name of the handler right here. So stream handler, like that. So what I'm doing here is I'm saying that whenever you want to use console handler, you need to use logging stream handler. So inside of logging, we have different handlers, and basically what those handlers do is they use different places to write your logs into. Imagine that you have files. You want to use a file handler, so logging, let me just import logging.handlers, and from here you can import from logging handlers, import something like file handler. Or if you want to use file with time, so time rotation, you can use time rotating file handler. Or if you want to use HTTP, you can use HTTP handler. So basically, different handlers choose different places for you to send your logs to. In our case, we're going to use stream handler and file handler for that video. So stream handler will just simply write our logs to the console, to the terminal, to the console. And what we need to do here inside of our handler is we need to provide the handler itself, so stream handler, and we also need to provide all of the arguments for that handler. So if we're going to use files, and you'll see what I mean, but for now what we can do is use just a handler without any arguments, and we also need to provide our formatter. So formatter is going to be main formatter, or main formatter, whatever. So as you can see, we have main formatter here, and it's the name of the formatter that we created in our formatters dictionary. So yeah, the name is the same. And or I think we just need to put format here. I'm not sure, but yeah, let's watch out for that. But I think we just need to put format here. So format is main formatter. So the name stays the same, but format is what. So what format are we going to use for that stream handler? As I said, we can create different formatters and we can create different handlers. And because of that, yeah, you can use different formatters, different handlers, and yeah, you need to provide what formatter you want to use for that specific handler. After that, let's create our file handler. So file handler is going to be handler, which is going to be logging.file handler. And we also have our format as main formatter, because basically we want to use the same format. We can use different formats, but I think it's better you always use only one format. Well, maybe different formats, but for different environments of your application. But you also use different handlers for different environments. Like if you're working in debug, then you may use more descriptive messages for your logs. But if you're working in production, then maybe your logs can be more simple. But yeah, it literally depends on your application and what you want to see in your logs. Now we have our handlers. We have console handler and file handler. And as I said, we need to provide all of the variables for that file handler. So in our case, it's going to be the file name. So what file are we going to write to? Info.log. As you can see, I do not provide file name inside of my console handler or inside of my stream handler, because stream handler is the handler for your terminal. It does not have any file name. But if you are using different handlers, then you need to provide all of the variables that the constructors of those handlers have inside of them. Okay, we also have loggers. So loggers, it's the next thing that we are going to set up, and loggers basically tells you what is the logger object that you're going to use. In our case, let's create a main logger. So you can also create different loggers for different modules, for different files. But maybe it's not a good idea, but for different environments, you can create as many loggers as you want, and yeah, they depend on what you're trying to achieve. So in our case, it's going to be only one logger, which is called main, and that main logger is going to have two things inside of it. First of all, it's going to have handler, which is going to be, it's going to have handlers, because loggers, so one logger can have different handlers, and it's going to be an array of file and console. So what does that mean? That means that whenever I'm using my main handler, I'm going to put each log inside of both file handler and console handler. So in our case, we are going to write to our console, to our terminal, and to our file simultaneously. And I think handlers, we also need to use propagate as true. Yeah, we also need to put propagate as true. It's a little bit difficult to explain, and if you want me to explain it, then I'll do it in the next video about logging. But yeah, the idea is pretty difficult. We need to talk about different stages of logging, and handlers, propagate, and level is the last thing that we need to set up for our logging. So level is the level that you're going to use. If I'm choosing info, I do not say that I only want to log info messages, so informational messages. If I'm using info 50, if I'm using info, I'm saying that I want to see all of the info messages and all of the messages which go above info. So in our case, it's going to be info, warning, error, or critical messages. If I'm saying that I only want to use error, then I'm only going to see errors and critical messages in my logger. So you're basically saying that you want to use level and everything above that level. So if you're going to use not set, then you're going to see all of the logs. If you're going to use debug, then you're going to see all of the levels above the bug. So yeah, basically it's very, very important to choose your level, because if you're choosing debug in production, then you basically have tons of redundant messages and maybe tons of very dangerous, potentially dangerous messages, because yeah, debug is not always the best. Well, it's when you put debug messages, you are supposed to put them in debug only. So yeah, always think about that. So basically, you always put info, almost always put info as your logger level. But yeah, it depends on your project once again. In our case, it's going to be info, and I think we are done with our logging. Let me run my project. And no, something is not alright. Let's go somewhere here, and yeah, style must be one of, and as you can see, I put the wrong curly braces, or curly brace, and yeah, we need to put that one, not the opposite one. Let's run it once again, and something's not alright. Once more, non-type attribute has no split. It says that console was not formatted. Maybe formatter. I'm not pretty sure about that. I said it, and no, something is not alright. Okay, let me just quickly see the history, because I had it before. Somewhere here. Format. Oh yeah. What we need to do here is, first of all, instead of handler, we need to use class. So yeah, handler class, and format or formatter. I'm not sure about that one either. Let's go here, and yeah, formatter. And here, yeah, I think everything is alright with handlers, so, or with loggers. So whenever you use handlers, instead of using handler, you need to use class. So class as logging stream handler. Yeah, that was an error. Okay, now everything is alright. And if I go to my page, if I go to my, I can open it right here. If I go to my test view, nothing happens. So as you can see, yeah, that view has been executing for. It's a middleware from my previous lesson, but as you can see, nothing happens. We don't see our logs anywhere. Well, we can see those logs like get test view, but first of all, they are not of our format. So if I'm gonna disable existing loggers, then we will not see anything at all. Let's run it once again. Yes, you can see I do not see any logs except for that view has been executed for. And once again, it's from the middleware, so it's basically print right here. And that's pretty bad. But what is the problem? The problem is that aside from setting up your loggings, setting up your logging, what you need to always do is log your things. So you need to write like log that or log another thing in your project itself. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna import logging, and I'm gonna set up my logger somewhere here. So logger equals logging.getLogger. So I'm doing that in views.py, and basically you can do it wherever you want, and as long as you really need those logs. Okay, so I'm in views.py, by the way, and what I'm saying here is that first of all, I'm importing a logging package. I talked about it before, and what we're saying here is logger is the variable that is going to be the result of logging.getLogger. GetLogger is a function that allows you to get the logger by its name. In our case, name is main. So loggers, main with those handlers, with those ideas. Let's go to views.py and let's just write main here. And now what we can do is use logger.info, hello, like that. Let's run our project once again. Let's go to our test view, and let me make it smaller. And whenever I refresh my page, as you can see, info, hello. As you can see, we have all the things that we used in our formatter. So the date, the level, the module, and the message. If I'm gonna say error right here, I'm gonna receive error as the level. But if I'm gonna say debug and my level is info, so something like debug, let's run it, I will not receive any messages, because basically we receive everything above info, and debug is lower than info, so they have numeric values, and info is like 20 or 30, I'm not really sure, but debug is much lower than info. So that is the whole idea of logging. If I'm gonna go to info.log, because remember we have file handler as well, which writes to info.log, we can see all of our informational messages here. And now what I can see is that our user, first of all, I can count what is the amount of, or how many times did I execute my views logging view function. So I can count that. I can see that, okay, we had that much errors, we had those info messages, and all of the requests happened during that time span. And yeah, we have our messages as well, and all of those happened in views. So it's very, very, very simple and very, very, very powerful. And basically, you always need to set up logging. If you want me to continue working with, logging, explaining logging to you, then just write it down in the comments. But for now, I think that's it. Thank you for watching, subscribe to my channel, leave a like, and good luck.